All right, so let's talk about the plain view doctrine here in chapter 10. Um, so this one is a rather interesting exception to the search warrant requirement. Um, and there are various requirements and non-requirements to the doctrine here, but basically there has to be some kind of a valid justification for prior police intrusion for plain view to apply. And there must be probable cause to believe that the object in plain view is incriminating. So we'll talk about that here in just a second. We'll also talk about how mechanical or electrical aids can help determine PC for plain view or can hinder PC for plain view. Couple other issues. We'll talk about basically that inadvertency is not required and how plain view extends to plain touch or plain feel. So the valid justification prior to prior police intrusion. So the officer must lawfully be where they are at the time that they observe the item of contraband. Okay, so they're making a lawful arrest. If they are conducting a search incident to that arrest, if they're conducting a protective sweep in conjunction with a lawful arrest, then they are lawfully where they're allowed to be. And therefore, any evidence that they or any items of contraband they find in plain view, as long as they have probable cause to believe that they're contraband, then the plain view exception applies. Additionally, conducting a valid stop or a valid frisk, any items located in plain view are seizable. In executing a valid search warrant, so let's say I have a search warrant for a house for drugs, drug paraphernalia, and items of identification because I smelt marijuana at the door. So I have a warrant allowing me to go into the house and seize items because in the particularity requirement of the warrant, I listed the charges of possession of marijuana, possession of drug paraphernalia. Okay, so while executing this warrant, I find distribution amounts of marijuana. I also find a large sum of cash money and a firearm and a cell phone. And excuse me. Granted, a cell phone in itself is not much, but considering that there are many more cell phones in the residence than there are occupants of the residence, we got an issue there. So, I am executing a search warrant for a certain set of crimes, and I discover evidence of those crimes, but of a higher crime than the one that I initially was investigating. And I find evidence after finding that, after I find evidence of distribution amounts of marijuana, I find other items of evidence that support distribution. Can I seize those items? Yes, I can. I have a valid justification for prior police intrusion into the residence. I am executing a search warrant, and I am searching where that warrant allows me to search. And while searching, I develop probable cause for a bigger crime than the one listed on my warrant, and I locate evidence to support that crime in plain view while searching on the search warrant. So plain view applies, and I can seize those items. Hot pursuit. Typically, whenever we think of hot pursuit, we think of like Smokey and the Bandit type of stuff, like a car chase. But here, it's talking more along the lines of chasing a robbery suspect through through town and they run into a house. And if while I'm passing through that house, chasing the suspect on foot, I happen to notice items of contraband, I can return and seize those items of contraband. Then, of course, if I have consent to be where I am, then anything I see in plain view, excuse me, anything I see in plain view is fair game. And then, of course, inventories and vehicle impoundments. And we'll actually talk about inventories and impoundments in greater detail in Chapter 11. But understand that when you are conducting an inventory or an impoundment, any items of contraband located in plain view are able to be seized. So you have the probable cause that the object is incriminating. You have to know or have reason to believe that the item is an item of contraband prior to seizing it. Okay, so you can't just look at it and go, oh, well, there's a bong. I mean, it could be a bong, it could be a hookah. You have to have something besides just the appearance of a bong to seize it. You have to have, like known drug history. You have to have the smell of marijuana or something like that to go with it to um, establish probable cause to believe that that item is contraband. So there's been several court rulings on all of these things. Using a flashlight in the dark doesn't constitute a search. Um, it that is common. Night vision also does not constitute a search in that court ruling. The Supremes said that night vision does not allow the viewer to see something that they could not ordinarily see. It only amplifies the present ambient light. So they've ruled that using night vision is not cheating. Binoculars, on the other hand, may or may not comprise a search, depending on their power and the distance that you use them from. So if you've got, your typical Bushnell, 10 by 2 or 15 by 2 powered lenses, and you're using them from half a block away to identify a person through the driver's, or through who's opening up the door on a house, that's probably not going to be a search. But now, if you got some of them great big old Mr. Magoo Coke bottle glasses that they use off the side of a battleship to look over the horizon to identify an enemy vessel, and you're using those from 2 blocks away, now we got a problem. Now, thermal imagers and aerial mapping cameras do constitute an unfair advantage and are considered a search under Kylo v. United States. That's a case that you're going to want to read. It's a very good one, but you really want to be aware of that one. So I'm going to take a moment of pause here, and I'll start you another video with this one in just a minute.